Robert Saul. We are back on AWS On Air to talk about security stuffs. I am the Threat Detection Incident Response Practice Manager for AWS. I look after a team called the Customer Incident Response Team, and this morning, Jason Hurst, a colleague of mine on the Customer Incident Response Team, joins us. We're going to talk about some cool analytics stuff, some open source tools that we released. Jason, welcome.
Hey, absolutely. Appreciate it, Robert. Thanks everyone for coming out.
So one of the things we talked about yesterday that was really important about the Customer Incident Response Team is all of the information and what we gather from working on security incidents, we turn right into tools and information for customers to use directly. One of those open source tools is what Jason's going to talk about today, and it's one of my favorites. We found very early on during our investigations that some customers have a really hard time with log aggregation and analysis. Logs are everything when it comes to incident investigations. And understanding how those logs are turned on, how they can be used for an investigation is absolutely critical. So to that, we actually built a tool.
We did.
We built an open source tool that all customers
can
use. It is a very cool tool that uses AWS organic services.
It's on the web.
for the log analysis and aggregation. So Jason, with that, it's all yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to jump straight into a demo because I like to show rather than just speak about things. And as Robert alluded to, we do have a tool. We saw customers were having a lot of concerns using some of our capabilities and stuff out there. So when we go into our AWS Management Console, I'm just on a splash screen. You can see the Quackens logged in right now. And I'm going to try and make this as light as a feather for everyone, so that way you can repeat these steps as well as you continue on through your AWS security journey. So the first thing we'll do is, well, security analytics. What are we analyzing, Robert?
Yeah, so logs, log files, all sorts of log files, and specifically what's happening on those services that the log files are capturing.
Exactly, and you know what our primary log source is?
I want you to tell me.
I don't want to. So our primary one is CloudTrail. When you look at CloudTrail, CloudWatch, when you look at all these different logs, everything, CloudTrail is kind of the go-to that a lot of folks use because it identifies the API layer. These are the actions or activities that you're doing that you're interacting with AWS services and your AWS account and environment itself. So what we're going to do is just look at CloudTrail real quick and see. Super easy. By default, it's really cool that when you go into CloudTrail, cool little thing that says event history on the left-hand side. And what we're going to see here is the last 90 days of API events that have occurred inside your environment. You can see that I've been pretty busy today. There's been a lot of assumed roles, a lot of assumed resources that I can see using ASIA key. But the problem with CloudTrail, and this is going to be during any time we do analytics, is scalability and usability. It can be when you run afoul of something and you have a security event or an issue in your environment. If I want to search through CloudTrail real quick, I don't know, ask me to search for something and we'll try to demo that.
Search for when someone logged in.
Okay, so super cool. In that case, I'm going to change my drop down. What we're going to do is look for an event name. Of course, everyone has this memorized, right? Make sure that you understand all of this because when you go down to our documentation, what you're going to see is all these actions for each of our services. That's basically what we're looking at is the actions for the service, which is the API call. In this event, I'm going to type in console login, or I could just type in login. And you'll see that there are a bunch of events that appear at the bottom. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and look for console login, and maybe. There we go. So here are the console login events. You can see the Quacken has logged in recently. You can see CIRT as one of our accounts, and then, of course, myself, some of my coworkers, we've logged into this account as well because we like using this for demos. But you can see that we've had just activity, and if I click on one of these events, again, I'm clicking, I'm doing a lot of stuff. I can see IP address, some of the metadata, some of the things, and then here is the raw CloudTrail event here. So super easy, right?
So I guess if you look at this, and if customers are looking at this,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of data. How do you get to a point? What are we trying to communicate to customers about? What they should be looking for.
Just look at all the things, right?
All the things, all the time. Everyone's got time for that. Right?
Exactly. So that's the issue when you have a bunch of logs and a bunch of things that flock together. That you have all these events and it's just a mess. So how do we clean up the scoop and identify? Exactly like you said. How do we look for specific events that are inside individual logs and individual things that we're trying to find? Well, as you can see here, I could do it in CloudTrail event history, but it's very click happy. So I'm going to be doing a lot of clicking, a lot of back and forth. You saw I looked at a single event. Well, if I wanted to look at all the console login events, that's not something I can do default from here. But what's awesome is we have a cool little easy button at the top right that says create Athena table. So if I click this magic button here, directly from these events, what you'll see here is, as everyone knows, just a DDL table. What we're going to do is we'll identify which S3 bucket I want to store it in. So I'm going to do this, identify my storage location in my CloudTrail logs. I'm going to go ahead and just create this DDL that all of our users, all of our viewers have memorized, right?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is where it gets a little difficult, is identifying, okay, cool, I can turn this into an Athena table, but again, the act of transferring from one service to another service can sometimes be difficult, especially if we're leveraging automation, Lambda functions. If you add a third service, fourth service, fifth service, now you're adding all that complexity and all those communication channels that just kind of quack things up really bad. So what we're trying to identify, and that's what we're presenting today, is how can I make this even easier? Well, you saw I clicked on the button. I'll go ahead and jump over. I have Athena up. And in this case, I'm looking at my S3 data events. S3 data events, just as a side note, are not enabled by default. Again, that's cost savings in order to help customers with their bill. And so when we look at that, if I want to do something from S3 data events, there's no cool button. From CloudTrail there is, but if I go into S3, there's no cool button that I can click on in order to create an Athena table. So now we have another issue, that we have inconsistency between our services as we're jumping back and forth.
Right. So let's just real quick, one thing, enabling that element of the S3 logs. Can you talk to them a little bit about that? Why is it important for customers to do that, especially when we start thinking about, and I know this isn't really the point of it, but I just a quick diversion. Why is it important? What's it going to give them?
Yeah, absolutely. So S3 data events, we talked about CloudTrail. CloudTrail is the API layer, where you're identifying how do I interact with AWS services. Well, how do I know other people interacting with my AWS services? Like API is how I'm configuring them, but how are people using those things that I've configured? That's when we start getting into the service logs. So as an example, S3 data events, who's uploading, who's downloading objects or keys from my actual bucket. As I mentioned before, S3, there's no cool button. I can't just click create Athena table. So when we look at that, what I'm going to do is, of course, everyone has it memorized. This also, and this is in our AWS documentation as well, absolutely. But I'm going to create this DDL table, and I'm going to create this external table in my S3 Access Logs database, and then I'm going to call it my bucket logs, just because I'm a little lazy today. And these are all the headers and things that I want to search against. And as you can see already, I've already run this query. So I have my bucket logs right here. And then if I want to test to make sure that it's working correctly, I'm just going to hit that drop down. And then I'll go ahead and preview table. And by doing preview table, it's going to go ahead and just quickly show me, all right, are my headers working? Absolutely. We can see that running afoul. My bucket that I have available that I set up my events for. I can see different transactions and data. But again, now we've gone from CloudTrail, where I could view one event at a time, S3, where I could view one event at a time, and now I can look at multiple events at a time. So already we're scaling. But it's still kind of hard.
Yeah, it is kind of hard. So, okay, data and knowledge are two different things, right? So when we start looking at data, when are we going to get to the point of where they're actually analyzing the data, like using their knowledge? They're searching for a time, they're searching for a thing, they're searching for a date range. How do they do that? What do we want customers to understand and take away about that element of it?
Absolutely, and thanks for that question. So as you can see here, again, our viewers, you can see that I'm just doing a raw query limit 10. Everyone's a SQL expert, right? No, I'm not. I suck at SQL. So that's why, I am not a bird of that feather at all. So what I usually do is I'll use Google Foo, or Amazon Documents, or I cheat. So the way I cheat a little bit is instead of trying to learn DDLs, instead of trying to become an expert at Athena, let's do the easy button. So this is where you were talking about our open source projects. If we look at our open source project, Athena Security Analytics Bootstrap that we have in.
Love this.
Yes, I love it too, in GitHub. You can see here's a whole bunch of cool things. You're going to see that it's going to look at CloudTrail, it's going to look at VPC, it's going to look at DNS. Again, this is try to get our customers started.
Yeah.
And then you can always add to this. But what's beautiful is it's a CloudFormation template. So now instead of me having to configure things, I just upload the template and I say, go do stuff.
We've built it for them. So let's put this into context, right? So what we're talking about is incident response. What we're talking about is, with a customer that's running these services, for the VPC flow logs, for the Route 53, what we're saying is we're giving you a tool for you to investigate what's happened in the past, right? And that is going back to what we opened with. That's one of the things that we found customers struggled with. So this tool, what you're showing, this is going to give them the ability to do that, right?
Absolutely. So you can see that we do have log types here. There's some pretty pictures, but at the end of the day, it is just using CloudFormation. And to make it easy, I've already just spun this up. All it is a file from my desktop. If I go into my management console real quick, I just go into CloudFormation. Super cool tool. Infrastructure as code, because infrastructure as code, it's already written out, so it's repeatable. Helps alleviate human error, because again, the more we let the machine do, the more time I have to do other things.
Right.
Again, I'm a little lazy. It's okay. Come on, that was a good explanation.
It's coming.
Yes.
It's coming.
So it is coming.
Fill the time with something. It's coming.
This is exactly why we do things in advance. So you can see right here, I've already created the security bootstrap. It's already spun up. But if you wanted to create a new stack.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Security bootstrap. What do you mean by that?
Oh, that's just what I named it. So here is the name of the project. And that's actually what I'm about to demo here in a sec.
Yeah.
It's called Security Analytics Bootstrap. But under CloudFormation, if I just want to create a new stack with new resources, I'm going to, from this project, if you scroll down on this project, you'll see, all right, how do I get started in doing this thing? Cool. There's a Getting Started section.
Good.
The Athena CloudFormation template, just download this template, which I have on my desktop right now. And then when you go into CloudFormation, all I'm going to do is upload that template file. I'm going to go ahead and choose that file. And as we can see on my desktop, one of these, Athena infrastructure setup.yaml is the file that you would download. I'm just going to open that up, and I'm just going to hit the next button. This is going to ask you some questions. So you can see right here, security analysis. What do I want to call my work group name? Well, I'm going to call it security analysis, just because that's kind of what we're doing today.
Right.
I'm just going to give it a description, because, and then here's where it gets kind of fun. Where do you want your output results to be saved at?
Yeah.
So
I gotta know where to find it.
Exactly.
Right.
If you want to save your queries and you want to reuse that query later, well, you have to save that query off. It's not just magic. It's not just going to fly in and give it to you. You have to save it off somewhere. So that's where this bucket does, is let you save it off. Then we're going to identify, all right, what do I want to call the database? In this case, I'm just using all the defaults. Again, just defaults to run through. You can name this whatever you want. And then as we continue through, you'll see, all right, do I want to do CloudTrail? We have CloudTrail. I'm going to say yes. And this is going to be the bucket where my CloudTrail lives. And this is going to be the date range that I want to start my queries from. So my database is going to go back to this day.
Right.
Let's say I only want to look at the last month. Well, I could set this last month, so instead of looking at 10 terabytes of CloudTrail logs, I'm only looking at the last month of logs in order to speed it up, because that's all I care about right now.
Just real quick, if looking on the screen here, so it's how far back from today do we want to go, right?
Or it's going to be the start date.
Okay.
Whatever the start date of the logs you want to analyze up to today.
Gotcha. All right.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, so it's a forward look, not a reverse look.
Right.
Yep. And then the account number, which is super cool because this also lets you do more than one account at a time. As we saw CloudTrail earlier, where I did CloudTrail, create Athena table, well, that's awesome for that account. What if I have 10 accounts, 100 accounts, 1,000 accounts?
Right.
Well, we need to scale better. We can't scale directly from the event history. We have to have the ability to scale, and that's what this allows us to do, is multiple accounts.
Right. Right. So that's one of the things that we found, working on incidents, is that if we think that, the click happy sort of, one by one that we thought was hard for one.
Yes.
Now let's think about 10. Now let's think about 20. I mean, the essence of scaling, right, is violated there.
It's absolutely a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then we continue on, and you'll see I can do VPC flow, and I can do Route 53, and then I just hit my magic next button. Again, cool little orange buttons. We continue on. Oh, I messed something up. Oh, I forgot a stack name. Testing.
There you go.
There we go. And I'm going to roll back if it fails. If something goes silly, I'm going to hit the magic next button. It's going to have me verify what I have configured. In this case, I didn't configure anything, so I'm not actually going to create this stack. But I did create a stack earlier so that we did see in CloudFormation. And this is kind of what it looks like. So when I go in, I'm now going to go from primary to my security analysis work group. Work groups are really, really cool because what that means is it's going to save your queries and your work in that work group. So if you're doing multiple cases at the same time, you could divide your databases and your queries across different work groups in order to isolate them from one another, so that way you don't accidentally mix your queries together.
Right.
So if you have multiple analysts that are doing multiple things, well, each analyst in theory could have their own work group.
Okay.
And then if we look at some queries, so for example, I manually set up my S3 bucket logs, and I'm going to go ahead and look for a request like soup. And when I look at this, all I'm going to do is identify, okay, here's a keyword search, really simple, select everything from my S3 logs where the request is like soup.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned earlier, why are S3 data events important? Well, when we look at CloudTrail, the S3 object level logging will show me how I'm interacting with the service. But how are people using my service that I've configured? Well, we can see here that here's the remote IP address, here's the requester. In some cases, you'll see that there isn't a requester because it's anonymous. Somebody is just accessing objects, getting the objects from my bucket.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really fast way to identify who is adding objects. For example, we can see that Oliver, our favorite doggo in the whole world, Oliver's awesome, he's a good boy. And we can see that he uploaded duck soup. Oliver's a very hungry puppy.
He likes his duck soup.
He does like his duck soup. And what I can see here is exactly that. He put duck soup up there. And then we can see later that CIRT, our actual user in this account, was going through and looking at and doing get requests, head requests in order to look at duck soup.
Yeah.
So we love soup. Soup is awesome. Soup is wonderful.
Okay, so we're about at time, and,
Yep.
and I want a couple seconds here at the end just to close with.
So I did want to show this CloudTrail query real
Okay,
quick.
be quick. Yeah.
Yep. So as I mentioned before, we do have saved queries. If you use the CloudFormation template, all of these cool demo queries are built in for you.
Okay.
So these are things that are saved off. So for example, I want to see all actions that Oliver did.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and use the demo query and, whoops, editor, if I get the right tab. And you'll see right here, I am using one of our demo queries for CloudTrail filtered user activity. And what this is going to show is user activity summary, including username. You can go in, I'm going to set the date range just for the last 24 hours or so. And when I go ahead and run this query, of course, it's broken. But when I run this query, there we go. So this is the other cool thing about Athena is I can go back to my previous queries when I mess stuff up, and I can
And there
run
it
real
is
quick.
again.
Yep, I broke. Oh, that's why. I'm in the wrong database.
But hey, we're about out of time. Let's get a closing. Jason, thank you very much for the time.
Yep.
You can find the tool, the Athena tool that we built up on the
GitHub.
Thank you very much.